Hey everyone, it's Saturday. It's Chat with Mac. We're glad to have all of you. Thank you for all of you that watch us on a week by week basis. Please subscribe to our channel. It is a horrible, rainy,
It's been
cold.
raining, temperature's been dropping.
It's been a horrible, just not the really sunny Houston day. This reminds me of being back home in Chicago. This is what this weather was. It's crazy. Hey, let me ask you. So we're coming to the end of the year, and as we have, and if for those of you that have been watching this for a while, we've been really harping on, the security aspect of, PC usage, laptops, infrastructure, all of that. We don't really talk a lot about stuff to do at home, as far as, your personal machines and security. And I think, remind me if I'm wrong, there have been some instances of home breaches, if you will, or lapses in security that have affected companies on the enterprise level. So I want to see if you talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, it's a good point you bring up. The biggest change we saw was when the pandemic first hit and people started working from home more.
Yeah.
Before then there was a bring your own device policy. We call it BYOD for short. So there was BYOD in place in enterprises, but not everybody was bringing their own devices to log into the company networks, right? So it's not until the pandemic hit, people started working from home more, and people started using their own personal devices to connect to their company network. And that's when the biggest problem started to happen. And so for the enterprise side, you have firewalls, you have your MSP or your IT person doing routine maintenance, you have your group policies that make sure that Windows is up to date, all these updates and patches are in place. The network is being monitored, so if there are certain things that are outside of the thresholds, IT admins get notice of that, and then they take care of it. But what happens on these home machines? These home machines that people are bringing into the office. So we've seen a lot of we have a lot of customers who have reached out to us and said, hey, we want to include these users' home machines into our routine monitoring, maintenance, and all that. So and there is an additional cost, if a company has, let's say, 50 devices, and then maybe 20 users are working remotely, well, now you have 70 devices, right? So that changes the device count. But now we are seeing that companies are wanting us to cover those devices in the same routine maintenance that we're doing for their corporate devices. And the reason behind that is it really stemmed from a couple of breaches that happened. There was a breach that happened, and actually this was at an MSP that was in Houston, and they got breached because an IT admin was logging in remotely, and that's where the attack came in from. So that's just a local example, and there's been around the world, there's been a lot of examples where the network itself was very secure, but you have to allow these people to log in, and that's where the bad guys got a doorway into the network. And once they're in, they're in. Now they have keys to the kingdom. So what you want to do, if you're connecting to your corporate network from a remote device, whether it's a company issued device or whether it's your own personal device, whatever that device is, you need to make sure that the protection on that device is at the same level that meets the corporate requirements, right? The security requirements. Now, there's a couple of things that you can do on your own, even if a device is not included in your corporate scanning or security service. You can still do a few things to make sure that the device is protected. So number one, I would say, is enable Windows updates. Just enable it. Just the default is between 3 and 4 a.m. every night. Just do that. Now, here's the problem with Windows updates. On a corporate network, you have group policy and you have out-of-band management. What that means is you rely on Microsoft's application to make sure that Windows is up to date, but you also have a separate third-party application that is manually checking if the machines are in compliance with corporate update policy. The reason for that is Microsoft's built-in update option has been proven over and over again that it fails, and it fails silently a lot of times. So that's the problem. So even if you enable Microsoft's auto update on Windows, which by default it is, even if you enable that, you want to go in there and manually check to see if Windows is actually updating itself. A lot of times you will, you have your automatic updates enabled, but one day you happen to go into Windows Update manually and trying to update it, and it's giving you an error, a weird error, right? Yeah. It's failing. We've all seen it, right? It gives you some weird error, and nobody knew. You didn't know. It didn't say that it hadn't been updating. You thought everything was good.
Right.
But now those security fixes that were released since it stopped working, they're not there anymore. So even if you enable auto updates, make sure that you manually check your updates every once in a while. Now, of course, the question is how often? The answer is, how secure do you want to be?
Right.
But I would normally do it about once a month, once every 2 months, somewhere in that range. The other thing is, make sure you have good antivirus, anti-malware software on there, right? That's just a given. Have a good software on there that will run in the background, and if it detects anything, it will block it. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that Windows Firewall is enabled. A lot of times people will disable Windows Firewall, and admins are known to do this too. IT admins out there, they will disable Windows Firewall to troubleshoot something, and then they don't enable it when they're done with their troubleshooting. Bad, bad, bad. Make sure enable those Windows updates. Now, Windows updates, good antivirus, anti-malware, Windows Firewall. Have these things in place, and you should be okay. Now, that doesn't mean that, of course, the primary objective is to keep the machine secure. The best way to do that is to have it covered in your corporate policy with regular third-party scanning and all that good stuff. But if that is not an option, then make sure you enable Windows updates, make sure your firewall is enabled, make sure you have a good antivirus, anti-malware software. And that should give you a good level of protection. In the corporate world, it's fairly easy to enable updating machines, right? Because we can do it via group policy, and then you have probably, some sort of management software deployed on all these machines. On home machines, especially if you have more than one, it's a little harder because you have to go to each machine, enable that update, and then on each machine, you have to check it manually every so often. So if you can, it's probably better to have that corporate service extended onto your
I was going to ask that.
Major users' machines, because especially what we call, I hate to use this word, but they're called whales, right? So these are C-level executives where they're prime targets, because me as a hacker, I'm going to target somebody of authority in a company where I can send a message pretending to be them to a subordinate saying, hey, I need, $50 money transfer to so-and-so account. I'll tell you later, but it's urgent. And most times the people who are getting these messages, they end up sending the money. That's why the bad guys keep doing it, is because they end up getting money. Always try to get your home machines covered in the corporate umbrella. If that is not an option, then do these 3 things to make sure that your machines are secure. Now, of course, the question, a lot of people will be thinking is, well, what about firewall at the boundary of the network? Yeah, you can't control that. I mean, it's somebody's home. You can't put a firewall in their home, unless somebody wants to do that for you. But that's why keep that Windows firewall enabled. Don't disable it. And we do a few other things for protection as well, like, and not all MSPs do this. It depends on the MSP standards. But one of the things that we do is what we call our intrusion prevention system that we implement at the corporate site, right? So basically, we're not just looking for specific types of traffic on certain ports. but we're looking for anomalies. So it's a dynamically changing rule set, looking at what is normal for that network. And if there's anything anomalous, it sends us an alert. And by default, we normally set it to block that traffic. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a company network that people from Houston are the ones who access this network all the time. So traffic comes in from Houston only. So our IPS system learns this behavior, right? It knows that traffic is going to come from these ranges of IP addresses all the time. And then one day traffic starts coming in from China. Well, that's an anomaly. It's an obvious anomaly. By default, it's going to block it. It's going to alert us. It's going to say, hey, something bad's happening. I'm going to block it because I don't know why this traffic is coming from over here. Now, there is a chance it could be legitimate traffic. There is a chance that one of the executives flew off to China because they have a manufacturing concern over there and they went to do business, and their traffic will get blocked. So they will have to call into IT and say, hey, why can't I log in? IT will see, okay, yep, we did get an alert. Our system did block it. We didn't know this executive was traveling to China. We are going to allow this IP address to connect. They enable it, no harm done. The executive can log in and connect, and your network is still secure. So there are a lot of protections that normally we don't think about on the corporate network that we don't have on individual user machines. That's why having a good MDM software, so I hate to throw out terms, but your mobile device management software is important, because that way you can control people's individual devices that they may be connecting to the corporate network with. So your enterprise can keep an eye on these personal devices. And MDM software has come a long way nowadays, right? So it's not like in the old days where it was clunky, funky, causing problems. Now the devices are, they're so good that you can allow a user to connect in, and then when that user leaves the company, you can remove that user from the company network, and the MDM software will remove all company related information on that device, but leave the private stuff there. So it will leave the private stuff untouched. So your pictures, videos, whatever you have, it's not going to touch that. It's just going to remove the corporate data, which is where we want to get to, is have that good MDM software in place for bring your own device type scenarios.
So wouldn't it be just easier with the time we have? Wouldn't it just be easier to just say, okay, if you want to bring your own device, you have to buy this specific device. This is the device we use, and it's already configured and all of that, because it just seems like a big headache for somebody to buy, let's say, a laptop from Best Buy, and it causes all these issues because, I don't know, forgive me the technical term I'm looking for, but it doesn't, I guess, mesh with our security protocol. So now you have to do all this extra work.
So good question, but here's the thing: if the company was buying their device for the user, then yes, the company is going to use its own standards to buy their device. But if the user is buying their device, you cannot dictate to the user, hey, you're going to get this machine, this make and model. You can't do that. However, the company can say, hey, if you want to connect using your device, you have to install our security application on that device, or you cannot access it. And a lot of companies do that. They will say this because, we've actually encountered it where, and usually in my experience, management overthinks this. They think their users are going to have a problem that, installing corporate software, security software on their personal devices. I have yet to see where somebody had a problem with this. It has never been, end users don't have a problem with additional security software on their devices, whether it's corporate software or some other third-party security software. As long as it's legit software, usually people don't have a problem with it. And so I would say, if you have a BYOD policy, bring your own device policy, make sure that it states in there that only devices that meet this criteria will be allowed to connect. And MDM software is getting really good now to where we can actually restrict machines from being able to connect unless they have certain patch levels in place, unless they have certain security software in place, like if they have updated antivirus in place. So in the MDM software itself, we can put those policies in place. So if a device is not up to date, we're simply not going to allow it to connect. Now, when I say up to date, it's not something like where we define if it has updates from up to so and so update number, like Microsoft's ID. It's not that. It's dynamic. So what we do is we tell it, hey, a device that is 3 gens behind in updates is not allowed to connect. So that's a wider window, and it doesn't matter if you're in 2022 or if you're sitting in 2025. If your device is 3 gens older updates, it's just not going to be able to connect. So we don't have to go, and a human doesn't have to be involved in managing that aspect of it. Once you set the policy, it's done, and it keeps updating by time. So it works really well. So MDM software really has come a long way back from the day, when they first came out. There was so many issues and things like that. But all that's been hashed out, and things are much better now.
Nice. Okay, gotcha.
So what I would say is if you are connecting using your personal machines, make sure Windows updates is enabled and working. You check it once a month, once every 2 months. Make sure you have a good antivirus and it's up to date. And make sure that Windows Firewall is enabled. It doesn't matter if even if you have your own firewall at your house. Like a lot of times Comcast sells their modems and says, oh yeah, it's got a built-in firewall. Don't rely on that. That's just a sales thing. It's not a technical firewall. It's just something that they can say to make them feel that, better than other ISPs out there. Don't rely on that. Keep that Windows Firewall enabled on your device.
You'll be amazed. Well, you'll be amazed at the number of people that I call and say, "Yeah, we're good. We got a Comcast firewall in place, and we haven't been breached." I'm like, okay, all right.
So we have found. Well, I personally have found ISPs installing Wi-Fi modems in locations with the default passwords in place. Not just for Wi-Fi connectivity, but also to administrate that device. For admin access, they have the default username passwords in place. And I know some of those usernames and passwords right off the top of my head because I've dealt with so many of them. So when somebody says, hey, can you help me configure my so-and-so modem? And I don't know the password, the ISP installed it and I haven't seen them since. And I try a few of the default ones, and usually one of those works. And it's amazing how lax ISPs are when it comes to security. And what's even more frustrating is companies like, I think it's AT&T that recently started pushing their security software. They're like, oh yeah, we have this security. It's just BS. It's a marketing ploy. But the thing is, they're making people think that they have something that's unique when it comes to security when they don't. I mean, they can't even change the default passwords. What more security do you want? Right? So keep that in mind. Don't rely on your ISP or a third party whose job it is not to secure you guys. Your ISP's job is just to get you connectivity. Their job is not to secure your network, right? If something happens on your network, you cannot go to your ISP and sue your ISP. Hey, how come you didn't monitor this? How come you didn't see hackers trying to break into my network? That's not their job. All they're doing is selling you that connectivity, and that's it. So I think, with this, people using their home machines, they will have a few things now that they can put in place, make sure they are more secure. Of course, the default is get your IT admin or your corporate umbrella to get it covered in security. But if not, then use a few of these things, and it should keep you relatively safe or safer than where you are right now. And hopefully, we avoid these breaches, and these things are happening just too often. I mean, so these breaches, and then these phishing scams, and people still falling for these phishing scams. I know one of the things. So I love metrics, and one of the things I know that's happened recently is we have seen a considerable uptick in people wanting to deploy security training within the enterprise.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that's happening. One is, of course, people are falling for these phishing scams, and the second thing that I think that's impacting this is cybersecurity insurance. Cyber insurance companies are denying coverage unless you have a security program in place. So unless you're doing security training for your users, they're simply denying coverage. So I think that's, combined, those things are what's really making that uptick in security training that people are wanting to deploy in their organizations. So with that, I think we'll call it a day. We've given people, three simple things they can do to implement right now, make their devices more secure, and make sure any device that you need that you use to connect to your corporate network, you need to make sure that you do these three things on all of those devices. So with that, we'll call it a day. Mac, what do you think?
Hey, there it is.
Awesome. Well, you have a good day, and hopefully everybody else will stay dry and have a awesome weekend. And next week is going to be short, right? Are we still going to do Chat with Mac?
Yeah, we probably will. We probably will.
Yeah, we probably will.
Yeah, we
Have a
probably
good
will.
one, everybody.
Everybody have a good one.